Welcome to Sarpy Outlook, a grassroots program dedicated to promoting democratic ideals from an issue-based perspective. This year, however, we are focusing on candidates who embody those ideals by running for public office. I'm Peg O'Dea Lippert. Our guest today is Mel Luetchens, candidate for Legislative District 2 for the Nebraska Legislature. Welcome, Mel.
Thank you, Peg. It's a pleasure to be with you.
I know that your decision to seek this legislative seat was very deliberate. Would you start by telling our viewers how it is you decided to seek this position in 2014?
Thank you. I was a candidate last time, 2 years ago, for this district seat and was defeated in the primary. People said, well, make sure you keep your bank account because you may want to run again. And I said, well, it's very unlikely that I'll run again unless I feel like we're not being well represented. It seemed like we weren't being well represented by our person in the legislature, and so we began by doing some House meetings to explore candidacy. We wanted to listen to people and find out what people knew about their representation in the legislature and find out just what issues people were concerned about. And out of those, several meetings and listening to people, meetings in people's homes with neighbors and friends, and listening to people's issues and concerns, finally decided that it was time, it was important to run and bring some of those issues to the fore and run on the basis of what we heard and how we heard people talking about the legislature in those meetings.
Well, I can certainly say that some of us are delighted that you have decided to run, Mel, because without going into any detail, I think I can safely say that the person whose position you seek is possibly one of the most controversial, if indeed not critical people in the legislature. So we're more than happy that you've decided to make this step.
Well, thank you. I'm glad now to be in the race because I think it's really, there are some very important issues that we have to deal with. And the main thing is people in our district and District 2 need to be well represented and need to be listened to. And there are many issues that the state is facing where we need to bring some consensus and work out some responses to issues in the body.
Well, that's a good entree into what would be key issues of concern for you when elected, I like to say, rather than if elected. But what would you hope to achieve in the unicameral, Mel?
One of the main things for me is economic development. Another is education. And another, of course, is how we're going to deal with paying for things, taxes. Those things all come together, really. We have in District 2, especially, kind of a composite of the state. Our district stretches basically from the urban center of Lincoln to the urban center of Omaha. And so how we deal with, for instance, infrastructure, roads, economic development, those kinds of things are very important, not only in our district, but that expands out to the state. So economic development is one thing. Another is education. I believe so strongly in education, the importance of education, the importance of early childhood education, public education, that it's supported well. We have to figure out some ways to deal with that because there's a lot of concern over property tax and how we will continue to support education not only from property tax in the counties but also with state aid to education. It's important that we keep our schools strong, and in District 2 we have some good strong schools. People often want to move out from the urban areas to come, and when they do that, they look at schools to see if they have good schools for their kids. So keeping the support for schools strong is really important. And how we work out this tax structure is a big issue. For me, it's really important that we have some good alternative energy in the future, too, that we work on that. We're ahead of the game in Nebraska, I think. We have good public-owned utilities, but this is our chance to really look to the future for alternative energy and working on that together as well.
Mm-hmm. I guess that presents a couple of questions, Mel. You talk about the economic development in terms of the urban from Lincoln to Omaha, but there's a lot of rural in between there. So any specific thoughts about economic development for those rural communities? A big portion of the district, actually, I imagine, is rural.
Well, that's what's nice about it, actually, Peg. It's a district that has a nice combination of urban influence and urban people, as well as wide open country and small towns. Some of those towns are really very vital. So one of the things that needs a lot of work or encouragement and building on is the good infrastructure, roads, and that kind of thing. The taxing of businesses is important. Not far from me, within 10 miles, there are two businesses that have been started by basically by farm families that are now actually international businesses. They have business in various places in the world and are expanding. One of the things that they talk about is having good roads, good infrastructure. Water is important to most businesses, and the other is the kind of tax framing that is supportive of them and is fair between urban and rural interests. So we have a real opportunity for modeling good relationships between urban and rural people in our district, kind of a microcosm of the state.
Interesting thought. You mentioned our being somewhat ahead of the game with our public utilities. Is that also in some ways a deterrent to expanding wind energy and solar, some other issues that people may perceive there's no need for us to do that, and yet we're one of the windiest states in the union?
It is. It can be, I think. I think it's also an opportunity. I think it's a good base on which we can build for the future, because we have good, solid energy that is not as expensive as it is in many other places. It can, if we're creative about it, and if we can work together and build some consensus, it can allow us the kind of base that we can use for getting into some new areas and planning for the future. We must get into the future, even though we have abundant and fairly inexpensive energy. We must get into the future that is sustainable. Another area, of course, is water. There are some states like Texas and California that are just very, very concerned because the emergency is right on them with water. We are ahead of the game. We have plentiful water, and if we're not careful, it's easy for us to become complacent and think, well, we don't have to worry about the future like those other states. In fact, it gives us a good base to begin planning.
Great. I guess the whole concept of alternative energies kind of, in my opinion, creates a link between the economic development and the utility that we spoke of, because their jobs can be created. You know, that's what we hear about wind energy, great opportunity for economic development as well as alternate energies.
Exactly. I think that's right on. In fact, all these pieces are linked together with how we're going to fund the future. That's why economic development is so important. And if we don't expand the pie, so to speak, if we don't expand economic development so that we have more income from these kinds of legitimate taxing entities, then we can't expand education. We can't look to the future for alternative energy because we're always behind the behind the eight ball on funding for these particular areas. Again, in our district, we are we can be out in front, I think, with planning for these things because we're not overrun yet by urban sprawl. We're on the edges of these cities. We can be creative with how the cities are going to expand and how we're going to cooperate together. We have a great area of our state for alternative energy, for wind energy, and other ways of looking to the future for energy.
You mentioned not becoming complacent about our water. I'm not going to pressure you, but I wonder what your views are on the pipeline and the risk that that might represent to our magnificent water supply in this state.
I talked to a constituent who asked me that question when I was out knocking on doors, and he said, well, the main thing I'm concerned about is the pipeline. I told him that I'd been kind of torn by it. At first I was very much against it, and then I got to thinking about the safety issues of putting all that oil above the ground and having train accidents and so forth, and then I began wondering if the pipeline wasn't the most safe of all. In the end, he said, the thing that I'm concerned about most is just the land, the water, so I'm torn. I feel like just ecologically that it's not a good idea. Most of all, I wish we weren't having to transport the oil at all. It's just really tearing up the mountains and the terrain in Canada, and I feel like we're a part of it because we're transporting that oil across the United States.
So it kind of ties into the alternative energy plan also, that maybe do we need any more fossil fuels?
Well, I would. That's the final bottom line as far as I'm concerned. We just encourage using fossil fuels, and I wish we could change that around because there's not a future there. I'm concerned about the future for my kids and grandkids, and so I wish we could change that. I don't think we're going to, and that's the dilemma. I don't think in this first phase we're going to do that, and I wish we could. That's why I think we need to be working on the other while we're doing these things.
Yes, exactly, yes. As they say, alternative fuels. What, Mel, would you want our viewers and the voters, most importantly, in your district, know about you? What is it that you bring to this? We've heard about your ideas, and now tell us a bit about you, the person.
Well, thank you. I grew up in District 2 and back on the old family farm place for about the last 14 years. I love this area, and I love being out in the country and on the farm. But I grew up there and had a great education myself. In fact, I often say I'm the child of early childhood education because my mother was a country school teacher before she married my dad and had us kids. So I feel like I come from that kind of a background, which was also very much focused on terracing, taking care of the land, building dams to hold back the water so that we preserve the land. My dad often said, there are people coming after us. We've got to save this place for them. But then went into the ministry, went to school and went to seminary and had a career in the ministry. First of all, in local church out in the central part of the state, and then in campus ministry at the University of Nebraska in Lincoln, and then I think one of the most significant pieces of my experience from my background is my time with Interchurch Ministries of Nebraska during the time of the rural crisis in the state in the early 80s. We formed a network of different organizations and groups, had some 50 altogether, and very divergent groups. I remember we were trying to build a response for farmers who were in trouble. We developed a hotline. We developed a section of legal advice for people and various kinds of things. We had ways by which people could get grants for paying for their utilities and so forth if they were in trouble. We had marital counseling for people, and the reason I point to that is because we worked with the State Department of Agriculture. We worked with very divergent groups. I remember going to Governor Kay Orr's Director of Agriculture, and he pounded the table because he was against what we were trying to do. I went to the Nebraska Bankers Association because we wanted to get mediation started, and they were upset because they didn't want mediation. And within a couple of years, with our network of partnerships, we had a mediation bill through the state legislature. The thing that I'm talking about basically is the experience that I've had in terms of bringing divergent groups together, building consensus, and working with a variety of groups and people, always trying to think about what the people's needs are and how we can best come to some kind of resolution of issues and differences and concerns.
Well, that seems to be one of the key roles of being a legislator in this state, you know, especially with our unicameral sense.
I think so. That's why I'm interested in it, and it seems to me a continuation of the ways that and the things I've committed my life to. In the past, I have enough income as a retiree so that I can afford to do it. In other words, I'm comfortable in that way and have insurance and that kind of thing, so that I don't feel like I have to. I feel like I can give time to give back to the people in the district that has given me a lot in the past.
Good. Well, Mel, I want to thank you for being our guest, and on behalf of the Sarpy County Democrats, want to assure you that we will do what we can and would be proud to have you represent part of this county. So thank you and best wishes to you.
Well, thank you, Peg. I appreciate being here with you, and I will do my best to represent the people of this district. I'm glad that a part of Sarpy County is part of the district. Thank you, and I hope that I can be worthy of your votes.